I'm so proud, I guess is the best way to start this. I'm so proud that the drug czar of Portugal, and let's see, I've got his full name here. He's the General Directorate for Intervention on Addictive Behaviors and Dependency. And I'm speaking with Dr. Joao Goulao, Portugal's drug czar. Hello, sir.
Hello. Nice to meet you, Dean.
Nice to
thank you for having me.
Oh, nice to have you. Again, we had, I thought, a very interesting time when I was in Portugal a couple of years back. We had a couple of meals together. You were kind enough to let me come to your office and do another interview. And I feel there is a bit of simpatico, a bit of understanding between the two of us that there's still much that needs to be done. Am I right, sir?
Yes, I completely agree with you. I completely feel the same about the meetings that we have.
Yes, sir. Now, one of the things, there's many things that are happening as we speak. Within the last week or two, the police chiefs of Canada came together and said they want to decriminalize all drugs, which you have done how many years ago?
20 years ago. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And then there's a gentleman, I don't have his name in front of me at the moment, but he was head of their substance abuse for about 20 years. He's retiring, but he's now going to grow poppies. He's going to extract the opium, and he's going to make heroin at cheap prices for the people of Canada. So they no longer have to use the black market drugs with the fentanyl and the rat poison and who knows within. It's a sign of progress, of intelligence, is it not, sir?
Yes, I think so. But anyway, this kind of attitude needs to be to have a legal framework. Yes, otherwise, sir. It's very complicated. And in our case, and to compare the situation, in our case, we did not legalize the use of substances.
Right. Right.
We just decriminalized. It is still forbidden, as you know, to use drugs in Portugal. But the difference is people do not undergo criminal procedures. People do not get a criminal record for using drugs. People do not end up in prison by the mere use of illicit substances. But they can have administrative penalties, as you know. So it's a little bit different. But we have 20 years in between of those two attitudes.
And go ahead. I didn't mean to intrude.
No. But we need to have that fact present. 20 years are gone in between, and lots of changes happened all over the world.
Yes, sir.
So it's probably time to think about a new paradigm. Yeah.
Yes, we in the U.S. we have had the horrible situation, as I was talking about, the black market in drugs. The heroin's not even heroin; it's fentanyl. People are ODing. 70,000 plus died just last year in these United States from these contaminated and ever more deadly drugs. And it brings to mind that we started, you want to go back to Nixon or Boggs Act or the Harrison Narcotics Act, 100 years, the penalties have escalated and over those same decades to get worse and worse. And at the same time, the quality of the drugs, the contamination of the drugs got worse. The death toll rises, the diseases are rising. And I guess what I'm saying here, sir, is that we call these controlled substances. And there's never been a bigger oxymoron on the planet. None of these drugs are controlled. Your response there, Dr. Goulao?
Yes, I agree with you. This kind of control does not work. And to put all the emphasis on the supply side and applying heavy penalties to drug users without dealing properly with the traffickers and the supply side, I think it's the worst thing to do.
Well,
In Portugal, we have some kind of a cornerstone phrase. In Portugal, we try to deal with and we try to go to control the disease, not the people who suffer from it. And this makes all the difference. And in the context the difficult context that we are living, I am proud to share with you the humane way that we found to deal with the most vulnerable populations.
Yes,
instead of just trying to prosecute them, to chase them, we understand that they are living difficult times, as everybody, but it's harder for them. And talking about migrants, talking about homeless people with problematic drug users, and we try to find the solutions to make their lives possible.
yes, sir.
Instead of just trying to have the harsh attitude
Yes.
towards them. Yeah.
Well, here in the U.S., we do have that ever-escalating punishment, so to speak, that once you get convicted, then you go to prison, you come out, you got to go to a probation officer, parole officer, you got to do urine tests, you got to pay court fees, you have to jump through so many hoops, and in so many cases, with that record of a drug bust, it's almost impossible to get a job or credit or housing. It's a real it's a real conundrum.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The difference here is that people do not get a criminal record by using drugs.
Yes.
So the stigma has lowered a lot in the last 20 years. It's possible to find jobs for people who once had problems with drugs. It's possible to talk about it in any context. If you are working in your workplace, you are feeling difficulties in dealing with your job, you can go to your boss and say, "Oh, I need help. I need to go for treatment, for recovery, any kind of help." And you may be ensured that you will keep your post. You are not losing it because you just confess that you have that kind of difficulties. And this is, in my view, this humane way to deal with these problems is the big difference in my country. And once again, I would say I'm proud of it, and I hope that it can be an example for other countries, namely yours.
Well, yes, we need it more than most, or anybody, I think. And what you guys have done over these decades now is being recognized, is being endorsed, copied in some cases, and at least in part, by other countries around the world. They are starting to take advantage of the trail that you blazed.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
guess what I would like to point towards is that you stood boldly. You had some cohorts that helped you put this plan in place there in Portugal, but you had to knock down a few doors. You had to clear the way for this to become possible. Tell us how that was made possible in Portugal, please.
You know, we had very particular conditions in Portugal when dealing with the drugs problems due to historical reasons. The problems related to drugs started later than in most European countries, and they exploded suddenly after our democratic revolution, but they exploded cross-cutting all our society. It was not something that happened only among marginalized communities, but it happened through all the society. Of course, marginalized communities were attained, but medium class, upper classes, political class, everybody. In just a matter of 2 decades, it was almost impossible to find a Portuguese family that had no problems related to drugs.
Right.
And that made, it turned the mindset of people. Because people tended to say, okay, my son is not a criminal. My son is someone who needs help. He needs treatment eventually. He needs support, but he will not benefit from going into jail. So society was pushing into that direction. I was part of a committee that proposed the decriminalization to our government. They asked us to build a strategy, and decriminalization was part of that strategy. And the government adopted the strategy that had proposals on all the areas, from prevention, treatment, harm reduction, reintegration of people, all that wrapped into that idea of decriminalization in the humanistic principle. But the government adopted that strategy, but the issue of decriminalization had to be discussed at the parliament.
Yes, sir.
So our strategy is from 1999, and the discussion at the parliament happened in 2000. And in between, we took that year, before the discussion at the parliament, to promote dozens of public sessions with the community to discuss that proposal. And what I keep from that period was a huge support. The huge assemblies organized in cinemas, in theaters, and so on, all over the country, with dozens, hundreds of people discussing. And what I keep from that period was a huge social support to the idea of decriminalization. But when we came to the parliament, things were much more complicated, with a bipolarization between the left-wing parties supporting the idea and conservatives, right-wing parties opposing and saying, oh, Portugal will become a paradise for drug users from all over the world. We will have people coming to Portugal every day by plane to use drugs freely. Our children will start using drugs with a milk bottle. Things like that.
Yes, sir. Now,
and also let me tell a very important argument from the right wing, from the conservatives. United Nations treaties. The United Nations will punish you, will blame you. In fact, we had that discussion in 2000 at the parliament. It was approved. It passed. The bill passed and came into force in the 1st of July of 2001. And what I can tell you nowadays, 20 years after, is that there is a complete consensus, complete political consensus nowadays. Even those parties who voted against the bill at that time are now in favor of our policies, because we have the evidence of the results.
Yes, sir. Yep. Well, what you bring to mind is that, you know, it took the populace getting behind the idea, the citizens supporting it. And I think we have in these United States a majority that would look kindly towards making these changes. What we have is these politicians who, and I use this phrase, I hope you understand, who made their bones, who decreed these laws to be so necessary, that all of these punishments should happen forever, that all of these people are bad and well deserving of the time in jail. And it's hard for them to back down now. We have many of them that are dying off or retiring, and we have many younger folks with more positive ideas that align with what you guys have done in Portugal. But it boils down to what I'm trying to do here. this seeking the moral high ground, to bring forward this discussion, to open it up, to expose this side and that side, and let's figure out what is best for our country. And I guess what I'm suggesting there, sir, is that we, by that I mean the United States, we run the drug war worldwide. We send funds to people. We say we'll support your nation, but you've got to participate in our drug war, and that has, over the decades and through our influence in the United Nations, it is also a strong plank or support or part of what runs the drug war. It is the United States will, if you will, that makes this all happen. Am I right, sir?
Yes, I agree. I think you are right. But let me tell you something. Nowadays you are facing an epidemic on opiates, mostly on fentanyl and similar things, that is also cross-cutting your society.
Yes.
And this crisis, I believe, can be an opportunity. It's almost, well, now we talk about the challenges and the opportunities that the pandemic crisis is posing to all the world. But also this one is a challenge, but also an opportunity to launch the discussion in the society, in the community, and to have a movement of people moving into that direction. You were asking me if our policy has had any kind of impact in other countries. Yes, there's a lot of curiosity of people from all over the world coming to Portugal to visit us or inviting us to go abroad and explain how it works. We very much prefer to have people here watching in place how it works. Because people come to understand what is decriminalization, and by the end of their visits, the most striking take-home message that people take is the humane way that we deal with drug users, drug addicts, decriminalization is a consequence of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have lots of visitors. Of course, this year it's not the case. We had to suspend, but just to have an idea, last year we had around 60 delegations from all over the world coming to Portugal, and some direct consequences. In Norway, for instance, they are about to take a solution, a legal framework that is directly inspired in the Portuguese experience.
Wonderful news.
Yeah, and also something that is important to refer. Shortly after our decision of decriminalization, we had a lot of pressure from the United Nations bodies. UNODC, INCB, coming here, visiting our government and pushing them to reverse the decision. It's curious that shortly after the decision was taken in 2000, we had changes in our government, and the conservative government came into power. And even then, they even if they had voted against the bill, they said, no way, we are not moving back. We decided to implement this, and we are going to experiment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they were brave enough to stick into this decision that had been taken shortly before. And then in 2009, for the first time in the UNODC World Drug Report, there's a phrase that says, even if Portugal decided to decriminalize, results seem to be positive for the first time 9 years later, they started to say something like that. And at the UNGAS meeting in 2016 in New York, the president of the INCB, International Narcotics Control Board, made a presentation on the Portuguese model, and he said, Portugal is an example of best practices within the spirit of the treaties. So the treaties have enough room to accommodate decriminalization and all the practices that we have. It was a kind of, how to call it, a snow cleaner. And nowadays, I believe it's easier for other countries that decide to take this pathway. It's much easier. The way is facilitated close to the United Nations institutions.
Well, you bring forward a kind of a parallel. Here in the United States, various of these states have legalized marijuana. This is contrary to federal law, which is kind of, in essence, similar to contrary to UN. And they have massaged the situation, and the federal government tends to stay out, but not always. And I guess what I'm saying is that they found a way, to work around some of the roadblocks. And I want to come back to something you were talking about earlier, the COVID-19, how it's complicating things. And it certainly is here in the U.S. They say it's slowing down the traffickers. They can't bring in the product they normally did, so they're using other more deadly products in their distribution chain. And I guess what I am a former law enforcement officer. I'm with a group called Law Enforcement Action Partnership, formerly called Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And what I really truly believe is that we must legalize, because in the United States we've had a new exposure of the racism, particularly, and I'm sure you saw the video of the murder of that black man, George Floyd, and I mean, he had a drug charge in his past here in Houston. But that wasn't exactly the reason why they killed the man. But what I'm trying to say here, sir, is that racism is rampant, is recognized, is known to be waged against the Black and Hispanic communities here through the drug war. And secondarily, and I know you can't defend all this and you've got protocols to follow, but the traffickers, they say, are drug sellers worldwide, $400 to $600 billion a year, which they use to corrupt officials at every level, judges and legislators, etc. And I guess you can't make this leap with me just yet, but by God, there is some validity to that need that perhaps legalization would be a better answer. Would you respond to that, please, sir?
I believe it can be a good response to this. But let me just comment something. Cannabis, marijuana, is not an innocuous substance. And people tend to present it as something without health problems.
Right.
I believe in the principle of legalizing, of having the state involved in the production and the distribution and putting rules, but for all substances. Why to have a special framework for cannabis? It is far from being a light drug, as people tend to present it. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
The strains that you can find nowadays in the market are really dangerous in terms of mental health. So, the principle is to avoid contamination, to avoid the black market, to avoid criminality related to drugs, we must think about legalizing all the substances and creating rules. So it's a new paradigm. Instead of the prohibitionist paradigm, we will have the regulatory paradigm. Okay? And I believe it can be a good solution. But anyway, I am still a little bit skeptical even about the experiences of legalizing, for the moment, only cannabis, marijuana. We still do not have evidence of the effects in the community. How does it affect mental health in minors? How is the use of cannabis among minors in a regulated market? People who can access the market are grown-up people. But what about minors? What about emergency episodes, psychotic episodes related to cannabis? What about cannabis and traffic and driving? There's a lot of things, and for the time being, you can find all kinds of reports, pros and cons. There's a lack of really isn't. I don't know if that word exists. Reports on the evolution in countries like the United States, in some states of the United States, but also in Canada and also in Uruguay. We still don't know clearly what is the real impact, because you have on the other side you have the pressure of the industry. They show, okay, this is the solution for lots of economic problems that this new market can solve.
I have to disagree with you. I mean, I've been smoking marijuana for 55 years. I drive with it every day of the year. I have never had an accident since I quit alcohol. Okay. And I will say this, that many of the problems you speak of are important and need to be addressed. I understand that, sir. But what I'm saying is these problems exist under the policy of prohibition. Prohibition, drugs can be bad. I agree with Nancy Reagan. Drugs are bad. Don't do them, kids. But the point I'm trying to say is that I think prohibition is much worse. It empowers terrorists, cartels, and gangs. It ensures more overdose deaths, more easy access for children through the black market. What is the benefit? What do we derive from this that even begins to offset the horrors we inflict on the whole world by believing in this prohibition? Your thought there, Dr. Goulao.
Well, as I said, we try to watch closely what really happens in a regulated market.
Yes,
okay?
Sir. Yeah.
And we are open to that discussion on the basis of evidence. Okay, we have benefits in taking out all this illicit market out of the equation. Okay, we believe, and this is a possibility. For a matter of coherency, I believe that when discussing regulation of the market, we should discuss regulation for all substances.
I agree.
Not only,
yes.
Okay, so in coherency with what we have done in 2000 when we decriminalized the use of every drug, not only cannabis, but mostly we were thinking about heroin, we were thinking about cocaine, the drugs that were really affecting our population.
I am aware that there is a group of current and former government officials called the Global Commission on Drugs. About 6 weeks ago, they came out with a report that says they want to and basically decriminalize drugs, aim towards legalization, but to go after the traffickers. And I say, okay, that's a good idea. But the traffickers, I heard from Anthony Placido. He was second in charge at the ONDCP. he was the assistant drug czar, if you will, but this is 10 years ago. But he said that approximately half of that $500 billion that the cartels and the gangs and the terrorists make each year, half of it is used to bribe border guards and judges and prosecutors and cops, etc. And I guess what I'm trying to say here, sir, is that as long as this prohibition exists, we're going to have madness and mayhem and overdose and children dying, and far in excess of what would be possible were these drugs actually controlled. Your response, please, Dr. Goulao.
Well, it's possible. Of course, I do not have an answer for that.
Yeah.
What I can reply to this is, meanwhile, give the step of decriminalizing is a good improvement. Decriminalize drug use and possession for personal use.
Right.
Despite all those discussions, all the discussion that is going worldwide about legalization, about regulation of the market. Meanwhile, decriminalize, and you have clear improvements immediately.
Yes. Okay. Yes. No, I look, I'm not trying to be counter to your position. I understand that your situation, and I guess what I'm just saying is, would that the United States would decriminalize, would that they would embrace your policy, would that they would stop arresting hundreds of thousands of people and stuffing them in cages every year for the crime of, wanting to get high. And I guess the point that that really needs to be addressed worldwide is that what is the real benefit? What is moral about this? Because I don't think there's anything moral to this drug war. Not one thing. Your thought there, sir?
Yes, there's no reason that the drug war was launched, as you said, with a big influence of the United States and the United Nations.
And based in racial bigotry to start with. But
yes, it's a tool for domination, for racial domination, class domination. And that is what is behind that. I believe that decriminalizing drug use, I think you are aware that in our model we have a kind of an administrative instance under the Ministry of Health where people are assessed, evaluated about their needs, and they are addressed different kind of responses or not addressed at all. If the evaluation that is done, okay, this is a non-problematic user, no problems with it. It is completely aware about the risks and what is doing. But there are other classes of drug users. Those who are dependents, those who are addicted and want to get rid of that addiction. And in that case, we can supply them the help to deal with addiction, either with harm reduction policies or with the offer of treatment with different modalities. Others do not have problems with drugs, but they have other kind of problems in their lives.
Yeah. Oh.
And drug use coexisting with other problems, with problems in your life, may lead you to a more problematic use. So we try to help to assess what is going wrong. Okay, I have no problems with drugs. I smoke a joint on weekends with my friends and no problems at all. Okay?
Right.
So we do not say, okay, you are using drugs, it's not a crime, okay, we'll go in peace. No, we have the opportunity, it's a little bit of muscle, to bring this person who is using drugs to the presence of health professionals.
Yes.
Because otherwise we cannot reach that population. Huh? Yeah. They do not come spontaneously to us. They don't need they think they don't need. But when you have someone sitting in front of you in a very informal environment, and you discuss openly the role of substances in their lives, you get a lot of information and you get a lot of clues on how to intervene, on how to offer intervention to people. You don't force people to accept.
Right.
So that's one of the aspects of our ways to advance, of our model, if you wish, is this one. And in fact, we have been quite successful in doing so. Of course, law enforcement, police authorities, customs, they all deal with bulk trafficking. They all still go on that. And I must tell you, they are much more effective nowadays in dealing with bulk traffic than before decriminalization, because they used to spend all their life, their time and energy with the street user instead of addressing the big shark, you know?
Yeah. Well, could I respond to your thought about the treatment, and you can't force the treatment? So often here in the nearly always, I should say, in the United States, it is forced treatment. It is intervention. It is pay as you go. They put you in a treatment center where they charge you on a daily basis. And once you run out of money, they kick you out. It is more of a scam than it is a legitimate effort, as you guys are trying to do there. I realize I told you we'd make this brief, and I want to come to the one question that this seeking the moral high ground is really all about, and that is to challenge Donald Trump, President of these United States, Joe Biden, who's running for that office, to address this situation, to talk about the need for change, if not make the change, at least to broach the subject and to begin to discuss this problem openly, honestly. Your thoughts there, Dr. Goulao?
Yes, I think it would be great. We have an open discussion about this issue on your society. It's the first step, and I think it's important that the lobbies, the people who deal with this and think about those issues, launch the discussion in society. I think it's very, very important to have it openly discussed in society. An electoral period is a good occasion for that. I'm afraid that COVID will just somehow hide everything else, you know?
Block it, yes.
Block it, but vulnerable populations are much more exposed nowadays than before. So talking broadly about vulnerable populations would be a good start, in my view.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, Dr. Goulao, I want to thank you once again for sharing your time with us here, for
It was a pleasure.
For your courtesy and your kindness when I was in your country, and just to I don't want you to think I'm chastising you when I say, you got to go for legalization, because that's a very cumbersome beast to tame. I understand that. But I just hope that we begin to tame that beast. And your closing thoughts, sir.
No, about this last issue. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you also for your being interested in talking to me. And I am very proud to have this opportunity. I know this will be an important contribution to launch the discussion in our society. What I would like to say is that the Global Commission is a very important body, in my view. They are very important thinkers, people that think about this. One of the members is our former President of the Republic, Jorge Sampaio. was the person who first launched the discussion in our society about the legal framework for drugs. I was looking at the tree and not for the forest. And Jorge Sampaio is a long-lasting supporter of this idea of legalizing drugs, but he completely understood that when we decided to decriminalize, okay, you are giving the step that is possible at this time. So I believe that your society is going through a period where open discussion about those issues can lead to some progress in your model. And I hope that you can contribute for that. I'm sure you can. Thank you for being here.
Sir, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Welcome. It was a pleasure.
All right.
Bye, Dean. See you one of these days. Bye.
I hope to get back there. It was a wonderful time in your country.
Okay.
All right. Goodbye, sir.
Bye. Bye, sir.